I am something of a geometer myself.
I am aware.
And so
Mike is an engineer.
yes, I am. Specifically a design engineer who specializes in complex geometry. So I thought I knew a lot about Pythagoras. But when you said something about getting to the beans, I have no idea what you're talking about. Please enlighten me.
This was a rabbit hole for me. I had no idea how much beans were going to factor into my study of Pythagoras. I was astounded, to put it lightly. So, we don't know exactly how Pythagoras died. That is one of the things that there are multiple versions, and because of all the secrecy surrounding him, we don't know for sure. One version is that an enemy general was coming to kill him, and that his only escape route was through a bean field. But Pythagoras, as everyone knew, would not come near beans, and so stayed and died. That is one version.
Okay.
Now, I could not pass that up, right? I'm not going to walk away from Pythagoras wouldn't go near beans.
Well, why would you? Okay.
Especially since he was a vegetarian. Part of his math cult thing, right? Math club gone horribly, horribly wrong, was they were vegetarians, but no beans. No beans. And so I start trying to track this down. Find out Pythagoras, whose father I believe was a merchant, actually put his father put a lot of effort and money and travel even into getting Pythagoras educated. And one of the places he sent him was Egypt. And that is where I learned that the Egyptian priests would not eat beans. This was something he had learned in his training, is that beans were either evil or sacred. This put me down more of the rabbit hole, discovering sacred beans even in Christian lore. There was one town, I think around 1000 AD, who was going through this extreme drought. All the plants had died. They prayed to St. Joseph, if memory serves, and the rains came and the beans grew back. No other plant, right? They'd been too dry for too long. They all died. And so the beans came back. And so there was this miracle of the beans, and beans were seen as sacred then. And all the way back, we see other examples of beans being just so hardy that they were seen as a literal miracle. Right here is the brown decaying death of a desert, and here comes the fava bean specifically. And so it's seen as this miraculous thing. And so the priests would, because the beans were so amazing,
Or else evil.
we haven't quite got to the evil yet.
Okay.
Right? The Egyptian priests, it was more of like, these beans are this great thing, and that was like a way of them sacrificing. We won't eat the beans, right? We won't.
Like
we
a
won't
vow
partake.
of poverty.
Yes, like a vow of poverty. Which, by the way, Pythagoras also had his mathematikoi, which is what the inner circle were called, could not own things.
Oh, wow.
I'm not making this up, right?
Okay.
There was an outer circle who still followed his teachings, but didn't do the whole vegetarian and not owning things
Okay.
path. I forget the name, but the inner circle I remember were called the mathematikoi, which is just amazing.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
All right. Now, so we have these beans. The fava beans specifically were these sacred beans.
Okay. Sacred
Right?
beans.
Sacred beans because of how often they save people. But then you also have, in fact, fava beans used to be, I ran across this in a cookbook, right? I'm all over the place here. Fava beans were originally used for falafel. they are no longer. Garbanzo beans, otherwise known as chickpeas, are now used in falafel because an entire people in the Middle East developed a genetic allergy to fava beans. And so the sacred bean had turned on the people. And it is suspected that possibly Pythagoras was one of these people who was allergic
To sacred beans.
Allergic to sacred beans. They're evil beans. Right? And
Or
then,
evil Pythagoras.
right? And
Who
then,
are we to question the beans?
Who are we to question the beans? Right? So this is just going nuts. And that's not even the end, because turns out he was all wrapped up into this, like, mysticism stuff where you have air and wind and spirit as kind of these conjoined things. And then you eat beans, which were especially fava beans, were very fleshy, right? When crushed and left out in the sun, were said to have the same smell as a murdered man's blood. I don't know how they differentiated between those smells.
That's a very specific smell.
And they were also shaped like, we're just going to say multiple human organs.
Okay.
And so it was believed by some, and again, possibly Pythagoras, that eating beans was a form of cannibalism. And that you would take in spirits. And these spirits would build up inside of you. And,
This is going exactly where I hoped it would.
I know. We have somehow brought you, ladies and gentlemen, to a fart joke. Somehow.
Wow.
That this was evil because it was cannibalism, and other philosophers and historians of the time mocked Pythagoras. There was one.
Why? This is all perfectly reasonable.
I think Herodotus actually called beans the relatives of Pythagoras as a dig at Pythagoras for thinking that beans were flesh and people and spirits, and that it was cannibalism to eat beans.
Oh, boy.
And that was the rabbit hole that I went down with Pythagoras and the beans. And yes, there is still a possibility that he was not crazy. He was allergic and had concrete evidence, right? We're coming full circle back to belief being whatever evidences you choose to accept. He would have had the concrete evidence of, I ate a fava bean once. The priest told me not to. I ate one. I was sick for days.
I nearly died.
There were clearly evil spirits exiting me. Never again. I will never again make that sin of eating beans.
And that brings us back to the faith thing, because when you've got a murderer behind you and a bean field in front of you,
yes,
that's testing how much do I actually believe in evil beans.
He had faith. He
Stab
had
me,
faith
bro.
in the evil beans. Better death by the sword than death by beans.
Death by beans.
Yes.
Wow.
It's worth the wait, wasn't it?
It really was.
And yes, so, boys and girls, when you read about Pythagoras in your math classes, just remember the noble bean that may or may not have brought down Pythagoras.